What could be better than a family camping trip in the summer? Hello and welcome. Welcome to Input English. Today we have a story of a young family on a summer vacation. Now, of course, the summer vacation starts with a lot of planning. And you probably should know that this family that I'm telling you about is my family from when I was growing up. So we had two parents, a mom and a dad, and then we had four kids, and I was the oldest. I had three sisters. My dad had decided that it would be fabulous to show his kids, the family, the wonders of the United States. He wanted to take them on big vacations so that they could see the marvelous things to be seen around the whole country. Now, we lived on the East Coast, and the things that he wanted to show us were mostly closer to the West Coast. So the first thing he had to deal with is getting us from point A to point B. He had to transport the family across the continent, across the United States, to get to the things that he wanted us to see. Well, he got a car and he built a car top container for luggage and supplies. He knew that we were going to have a lot of stuff to take with us, and there were four kids and the two adults, so he needed more room than inside the car. So he bought wood and designed his own car top carrier that mounted on top of the car. You could say that he was before his time because back then those really were not available. He built it. And looking back, I can report that it was almost waterproof. Not exactly waterproof because the doors that he fitted on it weren't waterproof. So it was at best water resistant, and if he drove it through the rain, the stuff inside was going to get wet. It's just what we had to deal with. They knew that we were going to need to camp because staying in hotels across the United States would be expensive, and so they concocted the plan to get a tent and the appropriate supplies so that we could go from park to park and camp along the way. That would be a great experience for the kids, right? So they bought a tent. The tent was made by the Coleman Corporation, and it was ahead of its time. It was round in its symmetry, and it had a boot so that you could back the car up with the tailgate of the car projecting into the tent. The idea was the parents would sleep in the car on a mattress and the kids would be in sleeping bags in this tent, but in the middle of the night, the parents would be able to care for the kids as needed. Perfect. They assembled all the supplies, they packed the car, it was time to go, and we left. And we drove all day, and it was in late June, so it was hot and humid, and they were tired. So the parents discussed the plans to camp the first night and quickly decided that they would be camping in a hotel. So it was probably a Holiday Inn, maybe a Best Western, and we stayed in a hotel. The kids thought that was great because it had a pool. One of the things that the kids were always thinking about is, what about the pool? A lot of campgrounds back then didn't have pools, so the kids were a little lukewarm on the camping if that meant they couldn't go swimming in a pool. Okay, so the first night we stayed in a hotel, got up early, packed out, and we're on the road. Drove and drove and drove. My mother had packed supplies to make lunch so that she was handing sandwiches to us as we drove. Didn't have to stop. We just had to stop for the bathroom from time to time and, of course, for fuel. And the end of the second day, they had a similar discussion, and we may have been in Texas by then. It was super hot. They were tired, and they made a parents' executive decision. We're going to stay in a hotel again tonight, because we're not really there yet. We're still traveling. So we stayed the second night in the hotel. The third night was also in a hotel. The fourth or fifth night, we had been on the road traveling cross country in the middle of a hot summer, and we arrived in southern Colorado at the Mesa Verde National Park. Now, we arrived there on the 4th of July weekend. We got in fairly early, and my dad drove the car up to the entrance and talked to the ranger, explaining that we would like to camp at Mesa Verde National Park. The ranger explained that all the campgrounds were full, but they did have overflow camping in a parking lot that was available. Well, my parents had decided we're camping. We're at a national park. We're in the West. We're camping. Overflow campground, no problem. So he paid, and we drove to the overflow campground. It was a giant parking lot with a bathroom building in the middle. And I don't think they were very happy about it, but I don't really recall the discussion. My dad pulled the car to the edge of this parking lot and picked out the best spot to set up our tent and park the car and arrange ourselves at the edge of this parking lot. It was fairly far from that bathroom. Over a period of hours, that overflow campground filled up. Next to our space, a group of young people arrived, several couples with lots of equipment and lots of alcoholic beverages. They talked loudly, they drank a lot, and they were having a great time. So we prosecuted our dinner. We had dinner and cleaned up and set up the inside of the tent. Everything was going exactly as planned, and the sun went down. It was now time to get some sleep. So the kids were all tucked in their sleeping bags. The parents got onto the mattress into their sleeping setup, and everything was great. Except the people next to us in the next campsite were drinking heavily and talking very loudly, and it appeared to us that they were beta testing the world's brightest camp lanterns. Now, I don't know the name of those lanterns that they were testing, but they might have been branded Surface of the Sun lanterns. It's possible. I don't know. So inside our tent, looking through the canvas of the tent, you could see the lanterns through the walls of the tent. Their lantern was so bright, you could read inside our tent. Well, the kids immediately went to sleep. They were completely unconcerned. They were tired. It was time to sleep, and they slept, all 4 kids. The parents didn't fare that well, particularly my mom. At some point, my dad asked her a question, which became famous in the family over years. He turned to her after quite some time of not being able to sleep, and he asked the rhetorical question, "Are you having fun yet?" No, no. So after a fashion, the obvious thing was going to happen, and that is nature called. That is, my mom needed to go to the bathroom. Well, they had anticipated that, so she had a flashlight. And so she got out of the car and pulled her shoes on and walked to the bathroom with her flashlight. When she got to the bathroom, she turned on the light switch. No lights. But she had a flashlight. She looked with the flashlight at the light fixtures, and all the bulbs were gone. Someone had stolen all the light bulbs. Special. So when she used the bathroom, she found also that they had stolen all the toilet paper. So when she got back to the car, she was not happy. At one point later in this ordeal, she had dozed off, woke with a start, sat up, and smacked her head on the roof of the car, on the inside of the car, and then fell back, defeated. The kids got a great night's sleep. The parents got basically no sleep. And that was the first, last, and only time this group of 6 people ever went camping. It did get worse. The following morning, it was time for breakfast. So my mom fixed breakfast for all 6 of us, and she made eggs and bacon and stuff and served breakfast to all of us. And after breakfast, the dishes were in a wash basin with soapy water. A lot of grease mixed with particles of food, and it smelled horrible. It smelled of grease and egg residue, and she wasn't having fun at this point. No sleep, total misery. So when it came time to do all this, she was cleaning up, and she took that basin of dirty dishwater and threw it down the hillside away from the parking lot, away from our campsite. She had not noticed that all our silverware was in that dishwater, submerged, not visible to her. So when she threw the dishwater down the hill, all the silverware went with it. We never saw that silverware again. She did not go retrieve it. So we packed everything up. We packed the car and the car top carrier so that the camping gear was out of the way, never to be seen again. And the rest of that trip, for another 3 weeks, we stayed every night in a motel. It was really a fabulous trip. And I tell you this story because it's really a slice of life. We have to be very careful about expectations. And my parents had great expectations for what was going to happen. And when they got what they got, they had to deal with it. And they did. And our trip was fabulous, but it wasn't what they expected. So that's the end of this story, end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I invite you to come back and visit us on future videos. See you soon.